What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about the newest Shudder original film that I'd heard some buzz about over the past couple of months from some people who got to watch it early. And I'm a huge fan of Shudder. I've talked about it multiple times on my YouTube channel. And while I don't always think the quality on Shudder is super consistent, typically around September and October is when they always kind of push their heavy hitting originals around. And I always get excited for this time of year in hopes that I'm going to get a Shudder original movie that's going to be fantastic. And this movie had a really interesting premise. The poster looked incredibly horrific, and I hadn't even seen the trailer for this yet, knew very little bit about it, but I'm going to tell you about it today. And the movie I'm going to be discussing with you is Daddy's Head. Daddy's Head is directed by Benjamin Barfoot. A boy and his stepmother fear for their safety after an eerie creature resembling the boy's recently deceased father visits them. So, I was really excited to watch this movie. As I said, didn't know much about it before I went in to watch it, and I really liked this a lot. I don't think it's perfect by any means. It definitely has some pacing problems, but I really like what the movie is trying to convey and the subject matter here. And there's a lot of attention to detail in the cinematography and in the production design and the sound design in the movie, and that's what made me like it so much. I feel like it's a film that does a great job getting under your skin. It's not necessarily a jump scare fest. It's much more about creating a very sinister tone that never leaves you for the hour and a half that you're watching the movie. And I'm excited to tell you about it today. So at the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Laura and her son Isaac, and they are at the hospital, and she is telling her son to say goodbye to his father. And his father has been in some kind of accident, and the doctors have said that there's no way that he is going to survive. And the father ends up passing away, and we learn that Isaac is Laura's stepson, and she has been dating Isaac for a few years now. He is in the architecture field. He's clearly got a lot of money. They live in a very fancy house in the middle of nowhere. We find out Isaac's birth mother had passed away a few years before. So there's not necessarily a strong emotional bond between stepmother and son. And so this situation has really shaken them up. Well, early on in the movie, we hear some noises and weird things going on around the house until at one point we see this creature that's dressed in all black that we see has some semblance of a face, but we hear its voice and it starts to sound like Isaac's father. And shortly after, the creature starts to take on his appearance. And the entirety of the film is the family being haunted by this entity that seemingly looks like Isaac's father, and stepmother and son trying to figure out what this is and how to stop it from tormenting them. Like I said, I thought this movie was really well done, and that is for a multitude of reasons. For starters, I loved the cinematography and the production design in this. There's a lot of slow moving shots and a lot of shots that just linger on empty corners. And because this creature, whatever it is dressed in or looks all black, you never know when it's going to appear in the corner of a frame, and it looks horrendous. Like, it really does look horrifying. And so because of that, you as an audience member are constantly looking at every single turn to see whether or not something's there. And I love a patient cinematographer. And that's what's really incredible about this movie is it's not like super quick cuts. It's lingering on shots to just build that sense of dread and suspense for you as a viewer, which makes the experience very immersive. Because this guy is an architect, the design of their house and this sort of like tree house type of thing that he's built for his son in the middle of the woods. There's just a lot of fascinating things to look at throughout the movie, and because of that, it creates an immersive world that you're always interested as to what's going to happen next. And that's what kept me so hooked in the movie, is just the production design and the cinematography and just this eerie ambiance. The sound design is phenomenal. You're constantly hearing something in the background, which just makes you all the more unsettled as an audience member. And that's what makes the greatest horror movies to me personally, are the ones that can kind of send a chill up your spine without necessarily having to show something horrifying. And there is horrific imagery in this movie, but it doesn't have to rely on that to scare you, which I really like. And I know there have been a ton of movies about loss and trauma and grief in the horror genre, but I really liked this one a lot because of what this creature symbolizes. And what's so interesting is you have this young boy who has already lost his mother, lost his father, and is now essentially in the care of this person who he barely knows. All he wants is a consistent presence in his life that can show him love and that can care about him. And you have this young woman who fell in love with this guy who wasn't necessarily ready to be a mother, who also feels this immense amount of guilt and is tortured by, like, if this kid gets put into the foster care system, I'm going to be feel awful that I didn't try. And you can see early on she really wants to help, but she's struggling with alcoholism. She's constantly getting plastered drunk every night because she can't handle everything that's going on around her, which creates a lot of tension. And then Isaac starts to see things and his emotions flare up, and there's just a lot of clashing. And I think what's so interesting is we don't necessarily get a ton of explanation as to what this creature is, but it's such a brilliant allegory for death and what death does to people. And I love how the face of the father is constantly smiling and giving this like kind of horrible grimace, because I think it's so indicative of how people reflect on loss, where we try so hard to remember the best parts of a person. We try our best to remember those happy and exciting memories that we have with people, but that death and that loss and that empty space left by that person is all consuming in comparison to the positives that we can remember, especially early on when we're dealing with loss initially. And I think the allegory here is so brilliant, and that is what kept me so invested, is just the level of detail and how this creature is reflective of the subject matter of the entire film. And I like the way the relationship is portrayed. I've seen some of the comments about the young kid. Oh, he's annoying. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, he's supposed to be. It's very similar to the Babadook. When people experience trauma or tragedy or anything like that, people overreact. They get very emotional. And I think this movie showcases the extremes of emotion that come out when there's loss and when there's death in a family. And I appreciated that a lot about this movie. I do think there are some moments that are a little too slow. There are some periods where I feel like the script could have been rewritten in order to keep the audience invested. I'm into slow burn cinema, so I can kind of excuse some of it, but there are some moments that I feel like could be tidied up a little bit. The performances aren't perfect throughout the entire hour and a half. There's a couple of moments of dialogue that came off as a little corny in comparison to some that I think work really well. But I don't think any of those complaints are enough for me to say like that it ruined my experience, because I thought it was a really effective film overall. And this is one of the best things that Shudder has put out this year. I really liked it a lot. And I think if you're into slow burn cinema and slow burn horror that will just like get under your skin and leave you with a very unsettling feeling, you'll really appreciate Daddy's Head. So have you seen Daddy's Head? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was genuinely terrifying. I really liked it a lot. It got under my skin, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.